Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Liam's Hockey. Brought to you by Hosie and Brown Automotive, of course, and Ad Seal Services. We thank them very much for their sponsorship. And our newest sponsor, which I've been teeing up at the end of the show, as I will today as well, Shoeless Joe's, specifically their new location at 4444 Innes Road in Orleans. So in other words, you could come out of Liam Maguire's, make a right-hand turn, drive, I don't know, what would it be, maybe 12 clicks, 14 clicks? Can't be much more than that. And right into Orleans and pull in on the right-hand side, and it's going to be a beauty. They'll be opening in about 3 weeks' time for a grand opening, and I'll be there. And we'll give them a shout-out at the end of the show. As I always say, just a quick one today. I really just needed to jump on, obviously. Topical moments, of course. I have not written or said anything yet about the Subban-Whalstrom, which has now been overshadowed by Gallagher and Stützle here with Ottawa and Montreal. And anything between Ottawa and Montreal is always juicy. Unfortunately, both teams, of course, missing the playoffs this year. For Ottawa, a record-setting fifth time. And the Habs battling right down for last overall after a miraculous and spectacular trip to the final last year. So it's a tough season in that sense. But if anything, maybe some interesting foreshadowing. I think they have another game left in a few weeks' time near the end of the regular season. That could be possibly pretty spicy. So in regards to Tim Stützle and the accusations by Brendan Gallagher, of course, partisan fans on both sides are supporting their respective players. I'm a Hab fan, so I'll be just guilty by association pretty much no matter what I say, unless I was to totally exonerate Stützle, which of course you cannot do. He is a diver, he's an embellisher, and he certainly, faked what looked like could have been a serious injury, and thankfully wasn't, with the hit by Nick Suzuki that ended up not being knee on knee, but glanced and fortunate in that regard. But he sold it and laughed about it and then came out and started the power play. So all of what Brendan said was 100% accurate. The fact that Gallagher has his own reputation is immaterial in this. He certainly doesn't have a rep for diving. He has a rep for crease crashing and for being a pest and for maybe doing a number of untoward things as a guy going to the front of the net in some of the battles and whatnot. But I think the body of work that he has shown throughout his career, the extent of the injuries and the blood, sweat, and tears that he has given on the ice, I don't think are the signs of a guy who's a diver or an embellisher like Stützle, unfortunately, is showing in his very young career. I do believe that the players, his teammates, will help him come out of this. Unfortunately, in Montreal's case years ago, with a guy that a lot of people use for an example, as in Claude Lemieux, it just didn't work. He burst on the scene as a rookie, one of the many. There were 10 rookies that basically came on the Montreal Canadiens lineup at some point in the 85-86 season, many of them playing into the playoffs and many of them winning the Stanley Cup. Claude Lemieux was one of them, and he had a spectacular playoff with Montreal. He scored 10 goals that playoff year, and he helped them, of course, the next year go to the semifinals. And then 2 years after that, they went to the final in 1989, losing to Calgary. In 90, they didn't have as good a year, nor did he. And by then, he had exhausted Montreal's coaches, most notably at that time, Pat Burns. And the people today, and I listen to our local radio, of course, my dear friends, JR and Simmer, and many, many, many other comments by friends of mine and people that I don't know that I think were spot on in terms of where this is at with Stützle right now, where he probably at this point has the full support of his teammates. He's able to draw a lot of penalties, an incredibly exciting young player, dynamic young player, burgeoning superstar, but he's an embellisher and a diver and now being allegations of faking. And it's going to follow him, and it may not be a big deal right now, as it wasn't for Claude Lemieux either until the conclusion of his fourth year in Montreal. And then it was a big enough deal, and they dealt him at the start of the season in 1990 in early September. In fact, before the season even began, to New Jersey for Sylvain Turgeon. So Sylvain Turgeon was with the Habs when they won the Cup in 93. Whatever. Claude was there. Listen, if Tim Stützle ends up having half the career that Claude Lemieux did, Ottawa will be in pretty good stead. I mean, Claude Lemieux played over 1,200 games, had about 800 points, over 300 goals, won 4 Stanley Cups on 3 teams, and a Conn Smythe. You know, on top of that, was he a cheap shot artist, a turtler, a diver, a faker, and you look at the hit on Draper and so many other reprehensible moments or times in his career. I don't see Tim going all that way. I don't believe. Because Claude would fight too, but only as a last resort, really. But I mean, 4 cups, 3 teams, Conn Smythe, 1,200 games, 800 points, 234 games, I think, in the playoffs. I mean, at the end of the day, man, he's checking off a lot of boxes for one hell of a career. And but, you know, this is the comparison. The 70s, we had Bill Barber. Like, they're really... I can't speak really much to that. And even I can tell you, for all that I've read and all that I know about NHL history, I just don't think there was a lot of it. If you go back pre-1970, I think that stuff was just absolutely so frowned upon. I don't know there was anybody really that did it definitively and with any regularity until Bill Barber with the Philadelphia Flyers. And he just drew penalties left, right, and center, because I don't think an official back then believed a guy would just dive. It just didn't expect it. I mean, he went right off the high board many times. It's amazing. But, you know, again, unbelievably successful hockey player, right? So it's you know, and then Claude came along, and there's been many others. I mean, even this, like, the guy who's going to be in the top 3 for the rookie voting, Michael Bunting on the Toronto Maple Leafs, has already been fined this year for embellishment penalties. Hathaway on Washington has been fined for an embellishment penalty. Just to give you a little history on it. The penalty first came in 92-93. The amendment they made in 2014 to it was, when you draw your second one, you can start being fined, and they published the names. They put the name out there. You so-and-so got a fine. It starts at $2,000. They increase incrementally, really, all under CBA rules. Nobody's getting hammered with these fines. But the point is, the names are put out there. And, you know, in some of the cases where Stützle has drawn an embellishment, I know post-game he said, hey, man, I didn't fake that and this, that, and everything else. But A, it doesn't look that way, and B, the rep's there. And say what you want. Came from Gallagher, pot, kettle, black, the whole 9 yards. Fact is, he's putting it out there, and the rep is only going to grow unless you go down like he did after that Suzuki hit and starts the power play, and he's smirking. It's just not a good look, and that stuff will catch up to you. Like, the next time he does go down, everybody's going to be looking and wondering, until we, of course, have 9,000 replays and see if contact was actually made, and then is he actually starting the power play, or is he being helped to the dressing room for some repairs or whatever the case may be. So that's my take on that. Exciting young hockey player. He should have a great career, and but he'll have to cut that crap out. There's no doubt about it. He's definitely an embellisher and a diver and a faker, and he's going to have to cut it out. Gallagher, his resume is full already of all sorts of things that people dislike. If he's not on your team in particular, he's a poor man's Brad Marchand. He doesn't have Brad's talent. He's never licked anybody's faces, but he certainly has been a very effective hockey player for the majority of his time in Montreal, and I think if he plays the bulk of a full season next year, he'll score 25 plus goals. Maybe even possibly get back to 30 again. I still think he has a lot of effective hockey left in him. I don't believe he's washed up by any means. This was an unusual and abnormal year for most teams, a lot of teams in the NHL. None maybe more so than Montreal when you factor in just alone with Weber and Price, let alone everything else. But Gallagher took his lumps too, injury-wise, and it hasn't been good. But he is not the same player as Stützle in any way, shape, or form. So I didn't really see that connection. But I do get it from the fan base's point of view. And it won't matter what I say because everyone knows I'm a Hab fan. They'll say I'm taking sides. But if you go online and you'll see the commentary from nonpartisan fan bases, in other words, the other 30 teams, and many of them are saying the same thing about Stützle already too. So, and he's getting the calls on it. I mean, this is the thing. It's the officials are seeing it. So. And now you've got this one on Saturday. With right or wrong, he went down like he was shot, and then he was smiling, and everything was fine, and he started the power play. It's not a good look. So whether Gallagher was right in him saying it or not, the fact is somebody was going to eventually, and the fact that it was Brendan probably really only accelerates what's been quiet, really, between Ottawa and Montreal for the last couple of years. In terms of on-ice action. They had those two great playoff series in 2013 and 2015, and my God, that's already so many years ago. So hopefully we'll have a good end of the season here. I think it's April 23rd. I'm not positive of that date, somewhere around there. I think they play again, and if anything, add some fuel to the fire going forward, which it should be. This is their closest geographical rival, and with both of them out of the playoffs. So there you go. Little Stützle Gallagher chat. In regards to Subban and Whalstrom, I know it was a few guys on my page there after I dissected the Beagle-Terry situation, the last Liam's hockey, that I said I wanted to see the hit again and wanted to find out exactly what the nature of the Hughes injury was. Well, the hit was to Hughes' left knee. The injury is to his left knee. Whalstrom came in. It was an awkward-looking play, wasn't it? I mean, Whalstrom comes in. He's kind of like... He's standing up and he catches Hughes awkwardly. There's no way in my heart, I believe he went in to deliver a deliberate knee-on-knee hit. It ended up being that, but I don't believe he did it deliberately. Could you have called a penalty on the play? Yeah, I mean, it's like an accidental high stick. Well, you need the guy. Well, you have to decide intent or not. It was a knee-on-knee. You could call it. You could have, but you could not have, and they didn't. So Subban's on the ice. He sees what happens to him, and that split second. He doesn't have the benefit of what we now have had for days, the benefit of the replay. So he charges over and he unloads on him. And again, much like Beagle was, like Jay Beagle was, they threw the book at him penalty-wise. 2, 5, 10, and a 10. He got 27 minutes in penalties, including the second 10-minute was a 10-minute aggressor on top of the instigator. So that's a rarely called penalty. It wasn't a game misconduct. He got 27 minutes for 2 for instigating, 5 for fighting, a misconduct, or maybe it was a game. I think it was a game that accompanied the 10 for the aggressor. I'd have to double check that call, but regardless, he got 27 minutes. Again, much like the Beagle call, officials got it absolutely right, 100%. I don't blame Subban one bit. Sadly, this has been in the game. Sadly, I say, because, not so much in this case, because it did look like it was a deliberate knee-on-knee. Your superstar young kid gets hurt, and Subban came over. We see this all the time in hockey. So whether Wallstrom's intent was to do it intentionally, I don't believe it was. Your young kid superstar has been smoked, goes down, and well, someone's going to go in. So it was PK Subban. Again, another polarizing player, right? Just like Brendan Gallagher. So Subban's polarizing, so he goes in, gets 27 minutes, and again, no supplementary discipline, nor should there be. It doesn't matter what you say or what I say, or what anybody in the media says. It does not matter. The NHL is governed by the Players Association and the Board of Governors and their representatives, and they have the collective bargaining agreement, and this is exactly the way they want it. If they don't, it will be addressed down the road at Board of Governors meetings, at General Manager meetings, at the NHLPA summer meetings, and they'll put it forth to their representatives, and they'll put it forth collectively to their union reps, and they'll say, hey, we want to do something about this because we don't want this happening. And none of them are going to do it. None of them are going to do it. Subban did nothing wrong. Jay Beagle did nothing wrong, in my opinion. This is the way the game is played right now. And unfortunately, some good legit hits are followed up with fights, and that sucks. And I wish that was out of the game, and there isn't a fan among us, I'm sure, that wouldn't want that out of the game. And that's just morphed in, really, in the last 20, 25 years. Did not exist back in the day. But it has morphed into the game. In this case here, Subban saw what he perceived to be a knee-on-knee for his young kid, superstar, and he jumped in. Got hammered for it penalty-wise, and life goes on, man. Life goes on. That's all I really got to say. Finish on this note before we get into this day in hockey and give our plug to Shoeless Joe's here, our newest sponsor. Tampa are looking, boy, I don't know if there's a switch to hit. They scored that goal last night, Ross Colton, to make it 4-3. This is a game against the Caps, and they're down 4-3. They pull the goalie, they score, and Kucherov, man, those last few shifts he had, holy jeez, he has another gear. Boy, oh boy, he is some kind of special player. Like, they'll be a tough out regardless, two-time Cup champs, but they look like they're feeling it a little bit. Let's be honest. They haven't looked like this for this many games, even games where they've been getting W's out of the last, say, 6, 8, 10 games, heading toward the very end of the season in the last 2 years. They have not looked quite like this. Now, 2 years ago, everybody reconvened in the bubble in Edmonton. It's tough to get a real feel on it. Last year, 56-game season, everybody playing within their division. It's tough to really say. Nobody in hockey is taking away their wins. At the end of the day, they won 4 best-of-7s, and nobody's going to take it away from them. And they had some incredible series in both those playoff years. Neither one of them being in the final, really. I don't think Dallas gave them a whole heck of a lot to worry about, and nor did Montreal. Despite the closeness of Game 5, it's still, at the end of the day, it was 4-1, and they were by far the better team and deserving champions, as they were against Dallas the year before. Few chinks in the armor here right now, man. Few cracks in the armor. So it's going to be very interesting to see. It looks like heading right now, if the playoffs were today, it'd be Toronto-Boston. Of course, subject to change. 10 games, lots of points on the table. Things can still flip-flop in that Atlantic, in that close Atlantic for to finish 2, 3, and 4. Boy, you want to avoid that 4-hole. I don't think you want any part of Carolina or the Rangers. I don't think you want any part of that action at all. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Carolina, I should say, or Florida. Excuse me, Carolina or Florida. You don't want any part of those guys. I think in the first round, both of them, I believe, are going to win their first rounds, and probably relatively easily, and are probably on a collision course to meet in the Eastern Final. We'll see. Playoffs are a different animal, but. Carolina and Florida, I think, have distanced themselves from the other playoff teams in the Eastern Conference, in my opinion. And so we'll see what happens there. But Tampa looks like a few chinks in the armor, so we will see. We'll leave the trophy stuff for a little bit later on. Want to wrap it up this day in hockey. So let's see here. Yeah. I think we'll go with the heart iron because we're going to toast, when I get to the toast, yesterday's sad anniversary from 4 years ago, the Humboldt Broncos. But this day in hockey, brought to you by Shoeless Joe's, their newest location, soon to be open, 4444 Innis Road in Orleans. Jeff Underhill, my buddy, and his partners working feverishly to get that puppy set up. And yes, as I'll say, continually say, for the time they're with us here on Liam's Hockey, and we thank them for it, that it is 100% an affiliation with the Shoeless Joes in Kentville, and which have been open for a number of years and do a fantastic job right off Highway 43. Boom! Right in town on the left-hand side. You cannot miss it. And I'm sure many at some point have been there, and you're going to see an equally, if not superior, effort here in Orleans. And it should be very exciting when a new place opens. So I look forward to being there. They look forward to seeing you and serving you. And they're going to open. They are scheduled to open the first night of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And holy lifted. Talk about going on the calendar and picking a night to open, Jeff. You got it going on there, brother. So, Shoeless Joes, 4444 Innes Road in Orleans. Keep them in mind. I'll have more to say about them as Liam's hockey rolls along over the next few weeks. All right. So, this day in hockey, few things, but really only one for me. Really only one for me before we do our toast. Heart Iron. I've done this one now for the last... I think last time I did Jameson's, but this is the one from Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, that my neighbor brought back for me. That's the home of the Blue Nose for you Canadian history experts. And the Blue Nose, famous ship, boat, and that's the same place. This is a whiskey from there. It's called Heart Iron Whiskey. Thank my neighbor Dar for bringing that back for me, and well, we're getting down there. A few more shots left. We'll have a good one here today. Ooh, yeah. This day in hockey, so the last goaltender to ever play and not wear a mask played his final game in the NHL on this date, April 7th, 1974. His name was Andy Brown. He was with the Pittsburgh Penguins. They played a game against the Atlanta Flames, which Atlanta won 6-3. It was 3-all going in the third period, and the Flames scored 3 goals to run away with it. They did use both their goaltenders in that game, Phil Muir and Dan Bouchard, who were the Flames goaltenders for the first number of years that they played in the NHL. And Andy Brown, who also took a minor penalty in this game, by the way, at one point he held the record for most penalty minutes in one season by a goalie. Just a little bit of historical context on this guy. He's a little bit of a wild man back there in the pipes, maybe because he had no facial protection. Like 1974, it is a lot of years ago, but it's not like we're talking about 44, or 54, or 64. I mean, my God, it's 74. I don't know. I guess it's a long time ago. But anyway, interesting thing, of course. So Andy jumped to the WHA, and so he's regarded as the last goalie to not wear a mask in the NHL, which is true. Then he went to the WHA, didn't wear one there either, and he was with the Indianapolis Racers, and lo and behold, in not his first, but I believe his second season in 75-76, he's playing against one Mr. Gordie Howe, who scores on him. Okay, no big deal. Gordie scored a lot of goals in the WHA in the 6 years that he played there. He scored over 200. So, but why that's neat is because Andy Brown's father assisted Gordie Howe's first ever goal in the NHL. On October 16th, 1946. His name was Adam Brown, and I believe Bill Gadsby drew the other assist. It was against the Toronto Maple Leafs and goalie Turk Broda, and that was in 1946. And in 1975, Gordie is scoring on his son. Come on. You got to love that. You got to love that. So that's April 7th, 1974. So that's my this day in hockey. There was a couple other things. Lester Patrick went in the net, speaking of goalies. It was the second time he did this. Very, very famous game, 1928. Lester Patrick, coach and GM of the Rangers. His starter gets hurt, Lauren Chabot. There was a goalie in the stands. The Maroons wouldn't let Lester use the goalie in the stands, so he had to put the gear on. What a lot of people don't realize, for you real hardcore historians, is he had done this 3 years earlier. This wasn't his first time. But he went in there and helped the Rangers win that game. They lost the next one. Joe Miller came in and backing up Lauren Chabot, and he ended up getting a shutout, and they won the Stanley Cup. And that was the, first Stanley Cup by the New York Rangers. And Lester Patrick played a big role in it. In fact, he let the first shot in, I believe, that he faced from Nell Stewart. But then they ended up winning that game and went on to win the Stanley Cup. So it's a cool story. That was also on this date in 1928. So there you go. I threw another one out there with another goaltender angle. Toast for now as we say grace and blow this place is obviously yesterday the 4-year anniversary of that horrific bus tragedy, the Humboldt Broncos, and the deaths and the injuries. Just staggering, heart-wrenching still to this day to think about it. 16 died, 13 injured, and just a horrific incident that happened 4 years ago yesterday. So I'm toasting them. I'm remembering my friend Clark Gillies, whose birthday is today. He would have been 68 years old. And my friend Ted Nolan, former coach of the year in the NHL, former player in the NHL, and man who took no quarter, gave no quarter, and just a prince of a man for anybody who's ever had a chance to meet him. He turned 64 today. Ted, I hope you're doing well. And so in the memory of Clark Gillies, and in special memory of the victims and those injured and the lives affected from the Humboldt bus crash and the anniversary of yesterday, we toast them today. We thank you for watching. We thank the sponsors, and we'll catch you next time on Liam's Hockey. That's a good one. G'day.